In the heart of Crestwood's poorest district, where cracked sidewalks told stories of struggle and broken streetlights whispered tales of forgotten dreams, a young boy named Joe learned the meaning of hardship. Joe was the eldest of 5 siblings, raised in a cramped, run-down apartment where the walls groaned under the weight of time. His mother, a seamstress, worked tirelessly, sewing clothes by candlelight, while his father, a factory worker, came home each night with aching bones and empty pockets. Food was scarce, and Joe often gave up his share so his younger siblings wouldn't sleep hungry. Despite his circumstances, Joe was determined to escape the clutches of poverty. He was intelligent, disciplined, and ambitious. While other kids played in the alleys, he sat under the dim streetlight, poring over secondhand textbooks. His dreams were vast, stretching beyond the limits of his neighborhood. His dedication bore fruit when he earned a scholarship to one of the city's top universities. It was a moment of triumph, the first real step toward the future he had envisioned. With nothing but a suitcase of old clothes and a heart full of hope, he left his home behind, unaware of the man he would one day become. University life was a revelation. Joe, once a quiet boy from the slums, found his voice. He excelled in his studies, formed alliances, and learned the art of persuasion. The naive child who once dreamed of helping the poor transformed into a man with an insatiable hunger for success. Upon graduation, Joe entered politics. His charm and intellect won him admiration, and in a few short years he climbed the bureaucratic ladder. His campaign speeches resonated with the common folk as he spoke of his struggles, his past, and his promise to uplift the downtrodden. When he was elected as the city commissioner, the people of Crestwood celebrated. They believed one of their own had risen to power, a man who would fight for them. But power, as it often does, whispered dark temptations into Joe's ear. At first, Joe kept his promises. He initiated programs for the poor, improved public schools, and repaired broken infrastructure. The people adored him, and his name was spoken with respect. But then came the temptations: wealthy businessmen who offered gifts for favors, political elites who invited him to private galas, and luxury that he had never imagined. Joe, once a symbol of integrity, found himself at a crossroads. The first bribe was small, just a simple gesture of goodwill from a property developer. Then came another and another. Each time, Joe convinced himself it was harmless. But greed is a disease that spreads swiftly. Soon, he was no longer the man who had starved so his siblings could eat. He was a man of suits and cigars, of lavish parties and secret deals. His policies shifted. He cut funding for public housing, increased taxes on the poor, and diverted resources to wealthy districts. The very people who had cheered for him now watched in silence, their faces filled with betrayal. Joe didn't care. He had climbed too high, and looking back at the past only made him uneasy. But power is fragile. Soon, whispers of Joe's corruption spread through the streets. Journalists began digging, uncovering financial discrepancies. His name started appearing in news headlines, and protesters gathered outside his office demanding answers. Joe dismissed them. He was untouchable, or so he thought. Then came the betrayal. A trusted aide, once his closest confidant, turned against him. Secret documents were leaked, evidence of embezzlement, illegal deals, and money laundering. The city turned against him overnight. When the arrest warrant came, Joe was in his office, sipping an expensive whiskey. The door burst open and officers stormed in. "Joseph Carter, you are under arrest for corruption, fraud, and abuse of power," an officer declared. Joe barely had time to react before they slapped the handcuffs on his wrists. The once mighty commissioner was dragged through the halls of City Hall, past employees who once respected him, now watching with cold, unforgiving eyes. The trial was brutal. Prosecutors presented undeniable evidence: hidden bank accounts, falsified records, and testimonies from those he had wronged. The same people who had once idolized him now spat his name with disgust. The defense tried to argue his past struggles, his journey from poverty, but the jury was unmoved. Joe had not just betrayed the people, he had betrayed himself. The verdict came swiftly. Guilty. Joe stood motionless as the judge delivered his sentence. Years in prison, stripped of his title, his wealth, and his dignity. As he was led away, he locked eyes with a young boy in the crowd, a boy with torn clothes and hopeful eyes, much like he had once been. Joe looked away, ashamed. Prison was a harsh reality. Gone were the luxury suits, the fine whiskey, the applause. His cell was cold, his meals were bland, and his days were long. For the first time in years, he was truly alone. Each night, he replayed his life's choices. He thought of his mother, who had sacrificed so much. He thought of his childhood friends, the people he had once vowed to protect. And he thought of the man he had become. He had climbed the mountain, only to fall harder than he could have imagined. And for what? Money, power, the fleeting taste of luxury. Final words of advice. Joe's story is not just his own, it is a warning. Ambition is not a sin, but losing oneself in the pursuit of power is. A man who forgets where he comes from will one day find himself lost with no way back. Greed, once it takes root, is a fire that consumes even the greatest of men. Integrity is fragile, and once broken, it cannot be easily repaired. Let Joe's story be a lesson. Success is not measured by wealth or power, but by the lives we touch and the legacy we leave behind. And the greatest tragedy is not falling. It is forgetting why we climbed in the first place. Subscribe to my YouTube channel for more gripping stories like this one. Let's learn from the past to build a better future. Like, share, and comment. Your engagement helps spread powerful lessons like this one.